Welcome! I'm Johan Nilsson.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy, and this is Impact Weekly. We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for Impact Weekly. And today we have another question, and let's get going. So this is the question. My customers are frequent users of our platform, but my numbers are not what I want when it comes to churn, contraction, as well as expansion. What can I do here?
Okay.
Let's do like we do here and zoom out just this little bit. So first of all, I want to say, talking to a lot of customer success organizations, that tracking usage, it may seem easy and simple, but I see a lot of times customer success teams not even doing that. So kudos to this person asking the question just to do that part, even though, as we can tell from the question here, that they are not maybe doing it all the way or not fully aligned with what they want to achieve here. So first of all, I think that's good.
Totally. Yeah.
But let's also, maybe we should look at a few scenarios. What comes to mind for me here is that a lot of times, especially if you have a product where the usage maybe is mandatory, you have this product and the thing you do with it, if it's an ERP or billing tool, you basically have to use it because you have to send your invoices or you have to do your accounting. That type of product is one scenario where I see this type of question coming up. You have that, so the usage is more or less mandatory, but they are perhaps only using the very minimum functionality here to just send the invoices or do the accounting, whatever. And of course, if they only do that, they probably will not expand. And maybe if there comes a cheaper option or a competitor with a better offer, you're quite vulnerable, and you might lose that customer. That's one scenario.
Another scenario is one where and this is a very confusing scenario for customer success professionals. You have a situation where customers are, quote unquote, using your product, right? And we'll talk about what we mean by that in just a second. They're using the product. By all accounts, that usage should indicate success, but they're churning out. They're literally canceling their accounts and moving on to a competitor, yet their usage seems to be just fine. Everything seems like it should be good. This is one that we see quite often, and this is really where this idea of a success gap comes into play.
Yeah. I think we should probably define or go deeper in, and it's the concept of success gaps. Maybe we should spend a little bit of time there, because I think this question is really hitting home on that very important part of customer success management.
Yeah, for sure. If you go back to the question, basically, my customers are frequent users of the platform, but my numbers are not what I want when it comes to churn or contraction or expansion. There's clearly a disconnect between what I'm seeing in terms of usage and that having an impact positively on the numbers that I'm measured on, or that we're measured, or that as an organization we look at. And so when I see a disconnect between usage and the metrics that matter, I immediately go to this idea of a success gap, because it's almost always going to be the case. Somehow we're looking at usage, which looks robust. The clickstream data is indicating engagement, but the metrics are clearly showing a lack of engagement, a lack of attainment of goals, something that's causing the customers to leave or right-size their account at renewal, or certainly not expand. Those are the things that we're trying to have a positive impact on when it comes to customer success.
Yeah.
So my mind always goes to success gaps. And to your point in defining it, success gaps are gaps that exist between your customer functionally completing the tasks necessary in your product to be quote unquote successful from your point of view as the vendor, and them actually achieving their desired outcome. So the gap between functional completion and desired outcome, that's what a success gap is. And once you recognize that gap exists, then you can figure out ways to bridge it. But if you don't know it exists, you're not going to work to fix it. And then we're going to end up in a situation where your metrics don't look that great.
Right.
And also where looking purely at usage and not taking into consideration the context of that usage, that's where you can get in trouble, because you can look at it and you could say, my customer is successful. They're doing stuff in the product, right? And then they leave and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But the example I like to give here to illustrate this point, and if you've listened to the pod for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say this several times because it's such a simple example that I think anybody can understand. So email marketing is the example I like to give. And whether you do email marketing or not, you've definitely received emails from people trying to sell you stuff, right? Somebody signs up for an email marketing platform, and what do? They upload their list of email addresses. They write an email. They write a subject line. They send that email. And if I'm the vendor, I look at that usage and I say, they were successful, right? Yeah. They did everything that they needed to do to be successful. But if I'm the customer, and what I needed to happen was to get people to come to my event, and I uploaded that list of email addresses. By the way, that list of email addresses was something that I bought. A lot of it's outdated. A lot of those people didn't opt into my list. So I'm uploading this list of email addresses of people with whom I don't have a relationship. I write an email, but I don't know how to write an email that gets people to take action. But I write this email. It's terrible. I write a subject line. It's a terrible subject line. And I send this email, right? And guess what? Nobody comes to my event. Nobody signs up for my event. Nobody even opens that email because it just ends up in spam.
Yeah.
But yet from the vendor standpoint, if all you were looking at was usage inside the product, you could say the customer was successful.
Right.
But if you could understand what the customer was trying to accomplish, and then you could understand a way to close that loop so that you could have that feedback, then you would know for sure that the customer is not successful. I worked with several different email marketing companies all within the same year. And that was wild because I don't generally work with companies that sort of do the exact same thing, at least not that close back to back. They were all aware of this. I think they all liked the fact that I had that exposure to other companies like that. And I saw a lot of movement in that industry. It was not necessarily net new customers coming in doing email marketing for the first time, but it was customers moving from one vendor to another.
Oh, yeah.
Because the vendor that they were using clearly was bad.
Yeah.
Right. The product was bad because they didn't get the results they wanted. Right. So they moved to the next one, and guess what? They didn't get the results they wanted. So they moved to the next one. So my point is, we have to be careful that if we're just looking at usage and we're not really understanding what the customer is trying to accomplish, and we're not able to measure that accomplishment, then usage is an input into their overall health, but it's not the end all be all. In fact, it can send us down the wrong path of thinking everything is great. So that's one that we see a lot. Success gap comes up quite a bit.
No, but I just want to emphasize what you said there. So basically, if we have this the wrong way and we look and use this email marketing example, from our point of view, we look at usage and we see them uploading the list. We see them sending out this email. All good. But from the customer's point of view, it failed completely. And they are actually moving to a competitor and maybe even giving us a bad review because they didn't achieve their goal, right?
Exactly.
So it's 180 degrees opposite of what we're looking at it a completely wrong way, right?
And I think that's why that example is so good and why I always go to it, because it is probably the most just pure example of exactly what you said. We look at it from the vendor standpoint that the customer is successful, and the customer looks at it from their point of view as a complete failure And we couldn't have more opposite impressions of what just happened. And I think
Yeah.
that's why it's such a good example. And I just want to make sure that you're not falling into that trap of looking at usage as, again, the end all be all of all metrics. And to your earlier point, some companies don't even look at usage at all. And I think that's wrong as well. Again, it's a great input if you have it, if you have that visibility into what's going on with the customer. It just can't be the only thing. And you almost do see most companies existing on sort of one end of the spectrum or the other, which is they're either hyper focused
Mm.
on usage, almost to the exclusion of anything else, or they don't really have any visibility into usage. And I think we need to exist somewhere in the middle.
You're right. And that one spectra is this more when you go all in on product led, where you only look at data and usage and those
Mhm.
points. And in most cases, you don't actually know the goal of the customer. So that can also misguide you here if you completely rely on that motion or that way of bringing in customers.
Yeah. The product led growth fallacy that your customer will just figure out what to do because your product is so great. It's what gets a lot of quote unquote product led companies in trouble. The best examples of product led growth companies out there, like Canva or Aha or whatever, are companies that realized it's actually not about product led growth. It's about customers, making sure you understand what the customer is trying to accomplish and that you guide them towards accomplishing
Oh,
those goals. The product is a means to an end. Product led growth is a nice sounding thing, especially for technical founders who really don't want to have to worry about customers. But at the end of the day,
mm,
customers are the ones driving your success. Just be careful.
yeah. So basically, if we don't know the customer's goal and we only look at usage, we are gambling more or less. We're hoping that this usage is actually aligned with the customer's goals, but we are in the dark, right?
Yeah. Again, if you listen to any episodes of this podcast, we talk about goal
Yeah.
discovery a lot. We talk about goal discovery a lot because it's critical to understand what our customers are trying to accomplish with our product, with our service,
Yeah.
in their relationship with us. That's actually the definition of customer success. And so I said we sound like a broken record, and then we realized that's a very old-fashioned statement.
Exactly.
We sound like a recycled meme.
Yeah.
I think is a better.
Like a Spotify song on repeat or something. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
For
But
for
exactly, but it is, and we talk about it all the time because goal discovery is really at the center of what we do in customer success. We have to know what our customers are trying to accomplish so that we can
mm,
move them in the right direction. And if we don't know that, then we default to other signals, and those signals, like usage, may not actually be telling us the whole story, probably aren't telling us the whole story, and in fact can send us down the wrong path.
yeah.
So, the email marketing example, if we were looking at things like unsubscribes from their list, if we were looking at how much an email got sent to spam, then we could intervene and talk about list hygiene, and we could talk about the source of their email list. And maybe they need to look at acquiring emails in a different way. If we saw that they had a link to a landing page, a sign up page for their event, and that the link got no clicks, then we could actually intervene with ways to develop a better call to action. If we saw that their emails didn't get opened, and we don't have to get into how that's a problem, open rate is a problematic metric when it comes to emails anyway. But if we saw that their open rate was low, we could intervene on how to write a better subject line or how to use better pre-header text. We're taking advantage of inbox real estate to get people to open messages. The point is, like, if we really looked at what it takes to to be successful and we understood what they were trying to accomplish, we could intervene appropriately and move them in the right direction. And that could be some training content, that could be knowledge based articles, it could be a webinar with upcoming with an expert in copywriting, if we're using the email marketing example still. Whatever that is, we could intervene. But there's one other thing that we talk a lot about in Impact Academy, and that's joint accountability.
Yeah.
And joint accountability comes into play in this example with really letting the customer know that Well, we've given you the tools that you need. You still need to know how to write a good email. You still need to know how to write a subject line that's going to get people to open the email. You still need to be able to create a landing page that's going to convert people to, in this case, signing up for your event. Why do I want to do that? I want you to know that our product is not magic. We maybe with AI and stuff now, I can actually help you write the email, but the reality is our product is still right with for better or worse. Our product is not magic. There are things that are going to have to happen in order for you to achieve the results you're looking for. So if I could just ask a question, what's the point of this email? Okay, I want to get people to my event. All right, now I have a data point that I can then come back and ask later on, even if I can't close that loop automatically by having tracking pixels and tags and stuff. I could come back and say, hey, was that email successful? Did you get people to sign up for your event? And if they say no, there's a reason to intervene, or there's a way to deflect to self-service, knowledge-based articles, training again, etc.
Yeah.
But joint accountability is really important because at the end of the day, there are things that the customer is going to have to do on their own. There's things that they're going to have to do on their own outside of the product that we don't have visibility into, that we just know they have to do these things. And in this example, that could be setting up the event landing page that we don't have any control over, we don't have any visibility into. They need to be able to do that thing well. There's also things that they'll do on their own inside the product, like writing the email. If we know about these things and we know that it takes some level of skill and experience and expertise to get those things right,
Right.
and we know that if they don't have that they're not going to be successful, that's a success gap. And so we can figure out ways to bridge that again through the different content types that I've already talked about. That joint accountability is key, one, for their success, and recognizing that and really making sure that they understand that they have to hold up that end. And of course, we're going to hold up our end of the bargain by creating a platform for them that's going to work, it's going to function, has everything that they need. But that joint accountability has a secondary effect, which is if they're not successful, let's say they go through this process, they don't get anybody to their event. And we've done things to help them along the way. We've given them the content that they need, the training that they need, and they're not successful. Then because joint accountability exists, they're going to realize that it was actually their fault. That they can take some ownership of the outcome that they didn't achieve.
Yeah.
Now that's important because you mentioned this earlier, Johan, that sometimes when they churn out, they'll go leave a negative review. If we can make sure that they understand that this was actually their fault and not a problem with our platform, maybe they won't leave us that bad review if they still churn out. But even better, if they don't blame us, if they don't think that our product is just terrible, they might give us a second chance. They might not churn out. They might say, okay, yeah, you know what? Let's try another email campaign. I did the training. I went to the webinar. I feel more confident. All right, let's give this another shot. So we're just getting them to give us another chance, which gives us another chance to make them successful. But if they blame us, if they can just write us off and go try a different vendor, we don't get that second chance to make them successful.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh, man.
and if you go back to the product-led idea and just things you could do in the product of literally asking them what they're trying to do, and they say, get more people to my event, you could literally give them the same content, the same training that you would give to somebody who's trying to sell a product, but you could frame it in a different way, or it could be a little bit different in the way that it's presented to them, but it could be the exact same training. How to write an email, how to get people to take action. It's a pretty normalized process. But if you know what they're trying to accomplish, you can say, here's something that will help you get more people to your event. And just by saying that, now this generic piece of content on how to write a better subject line is going to be much more meaningful to them.
Look.
So this is where we say, look, you have to know what their goals are. That doesn't always have to be a long, drawn out conversation with the customer. It can be something that's even just asked in the product. The main thing is to make sure you're asking it in a way that makes them feel like it's all about them and improving their experience. But we understand what their goals are. We know what the progress milestones are along the way. We know what the steps are between those progress milestones. So just laying all of that out, getting really clear on that. And then being able to understand what the usage patterns inside the product are that are in service of that goal, that are ensuring the customer is moving through those progress milestones and may be directly tied to the steps between those milestones. Those steps between the milestones may be entirely things that they're doing inside the product. So there's how you lay that out and understand that. And then how you are given visibility into this through your systems, instrumentation, and updating the customer record based on milestone triggers. That's all going to depend on what products you use. But even then, when you choose products that can help you understand usage patterns, those products aren't magic. You still have to know what usage patterns you're looking for. And so you still need to make sure that you're looking for patterns that are in service of the customer's goals.
Super. So for this person asking the question, I'll repeat the question. My customers are frequent users of our platform, but my numbers are not what I want when it comes to churn, contraction, as well as expansion. What can I do here?
So the first one is, and I think this is predictable, we have to know what the customer's goals are. If you figure out how to do that on your own, or you can use our goal discovery framework from Impact Academy, but whatever you do, make sure you understand what the customer's goals are.
Number two here, if we don't know the customer's goals and only look at usage, we're hoping that this usage is actually aligned with the customer's goals. We need to be improving the alignment.
And finally, we need to intervene when we see that goals are not being met, even if usage is quote unquote good. So that's where we really have to understand what the customer is trying to accomplish. And when we see that's not happening, we can't just rely on the fact that the usage looks good and ignore that. We need to jump in and make sure that they're getting what they need to get and making the progress they need to make.
So those are the three recommendations for this person asking the question. And keep asking questions. Thanks for listening, and we see you all soon. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.